In the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, I take refuge until I attain enlightenment. Through merit or practicing generosity and so on, may I attain Buddhahood for all the sentient beings. That's I think we are on verse number 97. 대베 나니 뜻도시 란지거 계주고 태양 대들미 대베 12절 코너 says 97 please.
Therefore, the happiness that arises from thinking I am being praised is invalid. It is only the behavior of a child. Therefore say it. 저장가다 가상은 verse the 96 간이야. 아니 계주 충분하신 저장가 96이네. 디 가상 근데 계주 좀 쉬워라게. 아니 떠라 땅도 갑이야. 아니 소소 캥바 기요레스 떠라 땅도 캥바 기요레스 다 딘지 캥바 기요 갑이야. 아니 소소 샘데 뭐 추부치체. 是吧？是不是什么的没出不去些大节气不是？咱们上面对了当不当啊？这什么些都是起居嘛，是。就像上了当的了呀，你了那去。他迷信的对了当不的搞不呀，所以说看不的结婚就准备，看不的考虑起呢，会感觉的人不习不起都是个样的是。感觉是那吃的嘞，吃了呀，说了呀，偏要开药嘛是。咕隆的三百药嘛是，我呢。 kulung ge samba de dembe ge khasa de kuran jibu chungbu yinza anga khoi jibu yudu sembe ngae dil den chinga jibu yong chogro basla be na ang khoi jibu de da ani susu jibu ni porole dewa ka khe yo mares kuran pena kuran togo jabi khala sa je togo jaba na shin khoi khala sa de togo jam susu togo jab yo mares dina shin khoi de da be ni susu ga go ye gi jum ka khe yo mares 저장 뒤 거두 삼로당국 열었을 여러 땅도 상관은 말해 미기 지기 제수이랑 제가다 개발의 제수이랑 제가 qabla 소소 개발 제비는 예 개발 제비 제수이랑 냠도 제야래 아 단다디 삼로당에도 소디 개치셔럽데 아저상 캥바기 qabla야 누수 삼로당당 लग망도 봐 어디 다 therefore 된제 인상스 that 삼로당단 된지 인류 세치 네 다네 때도 시에니 소소리아 미 때라당보다 남상 가줘야지 인지 미지바 가고 그랬어 그래서는 된지 때라당보다 가 메라당보다 두세데 남상 코나 삼로된지 아니 파르차 두번로 쳐줘 된지 제베이나 부구 춘주대 개박해면도 왔어. 부구 춘주 감상가 남산 독체 섬로도 지구 지냐래도 세지. 어디 was number the 97 the song one.
And so first of all taking sort of selecting out the very first word of the 97th verse where it says therefore the happiness arises. So therefore is referring back to the previous verse, verse 96, which we discussed at the end of the previous class. And here what the great Bodhisattva Shantideva is saying to us is that when we receive praise, then it's very often the case that we become a little bit kind of full of ourselves, sort of puffed up a little bit and full of ourselves. So this is quite a common experience for us. And so when this occurs to us, when we're praised and we look at our own mind, see what's going on, And if they're and so we sort of analyze at the point where this kind of sense of being puffed up or full of ourselves arises. So in the analysis, in the previous verse, the analysis talked about the way in which we kind of give two answers to why that's the case. Now, one of them is, the words themselves, the words of praise were very beautiful and very sort of delightful themselves. But that doesn't make sense for us to have that sense of being full of ourselves, or even the happiness, because the words themselves have no intention or motivation to benefit. They only they have no desire to benefit, and so there's no reason in that sense to take delight in the fact that the words themselves are beautiful. And then a second reason that we'll give would be that since the people have praised us, so therefore that has brought either them or perhaps someone else who's listening to the praise some happiness, so therefore I am happy. But actually, if we analyze again, there isn't really a relationship in the sense of the happiness that comes to someone else in this situation isn't actually the happiness. There's a kind of lack of relationship between say the person who's praising us and the happiness they get from doing it, and the happiness we receive from receiving the praise. It's just like if I go to the restaurant and I eat my fill so that I'm full up at the restaurant, it doesn't help in any way to fill the stomach of another person, and vice versa. Now, in certain situations, it could be that people sort of praise us or rejoice in us doing some form of virtue, and in that case, you could investigate and see, oh well, if you really have done some form of virtue, then maybe okay, I'll also rejoice. We can rejoice together. But this situation is talking more specifically about this time when we've got a kind of a sense of our own being kind of puffed up with our own importance, and this is where this is the time that we're specifically talking about here. And if we just react to things immediately, what it advises us to do is not to immediately react to things. So if we just immediately react to praise with delight, and we immediately react to being disparaged or put down with kind of unhappiness, then as the verse is saying, we become like our actions and behavior become that of a child. So it encourages us to get away from that immediate response to either praise or to disparagement.
디다 트레지 제장가 남주 디제버체가 가려야 미기 떠라 땅바되기 소소리야 캥바지용도 선배 캥바지용고에 좀좀 튀는면도 가지는서는 딘디게 떠라 땅셔도 그런 떠라 땅은 신할이 된디 민두세 삼부땅에들도 와 캥바딘이 좀 코여기 삼부땅은 신에 단다 캥바지거든 신시시 코여기 두세든 알려 여드메 다지는 여나 고 네原点现象고原点简这下그原点하고 개념에 소소야 캥바제 되베이나 뭐 딘디디 식 점시르샤 아니 작자다 버르샤세디 남용어란 저기 작자 에고스말에 에고 작자세디
에고도
제장가 밀람다보다 주마다보다 작자세다 다도 상말로 냠도 야원도 전배 신이 떠라당 비까버야 밀람다보 주마다보세 깨진 멤체 신이 떠라당 틱디 코원도 전배 작자나 시르샤스다 깨디 지고 잡대야지만도 소소디만라 얘기 등진리야 아니 저기 그 뭐니지도 튼데 토네 말이야 핑계민도스 알바 그 내야디 샤바질 뉴스 가진스나 내야디 ranzu da pen tosar karil dangzin pen to ngale pen to the yoji
Yeah.
yen dangzin pen to be na ngal ne do
Yeah.
ngale pen to ya dang yen dangzin pen to yin lo gar sha se ji wo ya da ji ye wo zu do ba
So
wo je zang da di ko du di je zang wo di ji ta cha da bu se de sam lo stam to ne ya do
and so here so just to sort of make this very clear at this time when we're receiving praise and there's a sense of sort of kind of puffed up pride or sense of being full of ourselves and so you can sort of also and somebody's praising qualities, and so we can look and see whether we have those qualities or not, and see if it's like that or not, and to see whether we have those or not, and then if we don't, if we do, because yunten yuna dacha do che kemba de gi yunten mena ane so ki kasade kemba ma che do shure yeah. So even if you do have the qualities that the people are talking about, then it's still advised to us that what we do is treat it. Sometimes the analogy has been used of like an illusion or a dream, but here, because we're talking about people, praising us with words, then the best advice to us is to treat it as as though it's just an echo. So it's literally, it's more the sort of engagement with just the sound, rather than the absorbing too much of the praise, because also what we have to do here is look at, if we're even thinking from our own the sense of our own benefit or our own welfare, we have to divide these two things up. One is whether they're helping, this is really the situation, and these situations are really helping us, or are they just helping our self-grasping? So our sort of grasping, ego grasping. And if it's just kind of supporting and helping us to generate further self-grasping, then this is not helping us at all. This is harming us. And so you helping me and helping oneself and helping my self-grasping are two completely different things. And so in these situations, so even if the praise were sort of, kind of in line with the situation and the qualities we have, still it's advised to treat it as a kind of echo, so that we don't have any sense of sort of over grasping it, a kind of strong sense of ego grasping.
What was it? That in 98. Number 7.
Yeah.
对说当你因为切，听你中昂几个切，原点点了，差多了，普通出版几个切。98, please.
Praise and so forth distract me, and also undermine my delusion with cyclic existence. I start to envy those who have good qualities, and all the very best is destroyed.
If we try to think as what Shantideva has taught here, the most disadvantage of when you someone praising you and your ego is getting much more solid or stronger, the result of that is there is a more kind of
a distraction.
Distraction.
Yeah, and this here it's distraction.
Yeah, distraction. So how does that work? How does that come? 다시상가 뼈라 딜레서나 이영화 컨텐츠리도 다딩은 잡아쳐야 돼. 기치주디. 미신기 뼈라 땅에 캥받지 다 돌드나 뼈라 땅은 잠시 말해. 뼈라 뛰기 캥받지. 캥받디기 심 이영화리도 그렇다. 다 심기 이영화디 컨텐츠리도 다 아주디 이지메 공부시하고도 저장 다 타를 못 뺐다고 요 말해. 소소래 냠냠요래 배나 란주 손으로 차샤비나 아니 토자고자 란줄이야 지 레가도지 도미니기 레가도지 되비나 아니 토자고자다 지 소소기 내세디 뭐 데스 마무이 미체 아니 되네 람상 컴 소소리야 컴퍼니기 CEO 기 레가 손으로지 다 람상 라나 아니 되네 배 가네 배 주네 배 아니 되네 신 지기 세미나로야 지금 소소를 남규니 갑대 작사도 졸라야 갑대 작강도 따야 그봐 아니 되네 지금 소소기 남셔 준도다 지금 제기 전도 여발라 아니 지금 주드레 벤조르 명단도 저기 마당버디기 다 되게 역다 쳐봤어요. 한 차시 먹고 싶지 그런 신기래 봐. 소소리야 뼈바다 작바다 니바다 꾸디도 좀 레온도 잠배. 디게디 안주 신된 체바야 당 소소기 심 야르당에 펜토요. 제장가 들은 것은 전부는 니 벤조고 토네 당나마다 만들어 들은 것은 쉽지 열기로요. 라자트 열기로요. 벤조 열기로요. 미게르 소소 내당 벤조도 야고요. 얘는 디기 갖두기네 딱 들은 것은 지겔이네래 딱 과리네래 최제 고급춘이라고 하면도 고급춘이라고 하면도 써야 되겠다 리단 저와 요면 따야래다 최제 고급 가르치느라고 하면도 쓰다나 아니 고급 원에 말아야 돼 좀 전조 저버데 아니 지금 가르쳐 그래 투주 삼십 개지면 많이 붙여 아니 투주기 제선 로단데 투주기 제선 로단데 그뒤는 차단몽선 바땅군이 선로 차원도 전배 아니 최제 고거라고 해도 투주라고 해도 써야 돼 패전디 더블어지 요래 다디 소소소 삼다야 아니 지기 최기 삼로 야고 여디니 지기 지딩기 차와 지기 소소로 통중 진행다 단대나도 와 단다 와 치고 뭐다 다랑 병거리 미기 was number 99 나로 도와 말도 좀 고요르스 미 통중 단행 알고 도스 아니 지기 메라당에 이내래 아니 콘도 중에 알고 도스다디 아니 베 산지기 질럽 심전나로 주시 아니 알 산지기 남든 지기 선도도 세지요 람든 인도점에 람든 지기 선도도 스탠다드 세지 오만 주는 중도가 이 인도점에 땅 알아서 지지지조리 이내래 과리 이내래 다디 세미나로를 이제면 다져 지야 돼 맞아로 최지 고급배나 최지도 지야 돼 지금 최년배 년세 지역가 지고마도 디네 gelche 아니 소소래가 가be 이내리 아니 지기 실로래 vacation drove 가be 이내리 대조 가be 키르마투야티 좀전 쪼디 대조 망치에 파 차담 땅고 위에 선도 로야디 자와 가를 도용도 지도된데 아니 수송아 제델이야 아니 차담 좀 가두이네 딜라 지금 잡혀야지 로봇이야 또 지기 수술이야 간연시 태원도 좀 다 드린 간연들은 동네시에지라서 세 가와딩을 좀 내두고도 와 어디 뒷단다 어디지 교르션 등면도 돌듯이
and so so this the verse 98 talks about this in the first line. It sort of talks about how praise and so forth, and what I'll reference here later on is the the kind of 8 worldly concerns, or particularly the 4 main worldly concerns, and that how they distract us. So this is sort of so what I think happens. So we have to look at how does praise cause this kind of sense of distraction to occur. But also then I think we have to look at, well, praise happens and then we get sort of full of ourselves, puffed up, and then the mind gets distracted. So how does that work? So we don't have to think very far away to find an example of it. You have to think of very far away. For instance, this probably happened to all of us in our life experience. Let's take an example where we're given some work in a company. But when we first enter the company, we get work at a kind of very low level, and we have to perform our duties in that way. And then suddenly, out of the blue, we're promoted to being the CEO of the company, and now, almost immediately, sort of thing. And now, this sense of being puffed up and important and full of ourselves arises, and the normal ways in which we do things, the normal ways in which we did things in a kind of in performing our regular duty, this brings many difficulties, and this brings on the concerns of fame, of name, of economic advantage, of sort of repute and esteem. All of these worldly dharmas start to come into, start to be sort of arise. And what we can see, with these things like, what we can see is that the mind, which is a sort of valuing, positive and constructive behavior and beneficially working things for others, are generally reduced by these situations. So we can see this, whether it's in foreign countries, or we see it everywhere in the world these days, when people, have better conditions, good salary, economic, comfortable economic position, then we start to see this in the modern world. We see that people start saying, "Oh, I haven't got any time. I don't have the opportunity to practice the Dharma." And now, if we look at this, we think, well, what's the reason? Why is that? Now, I don't think it's just time. Or rather, what's being concealed behind the phrase, "I don't have enough time to practice the Dharma," is something a little bit more kind of sneaky. But we're saying that what we're doing is that the other activities that we do, the activities we get involved in are being being drawn into or engaged in these activities very clearly by under the sway of attachment, aversion, and ignorance, and therefore, under the sway of those, we don't have time, and we get drawn away into worldly concerns. Under the sway of these 3 poisons, we get drawn away into these concerns. We don't have time to properly engage with the Dharma. And actually, in the next verse, which I'll come to in a minute, it's sort of talking about how people looking down on us, people disparaging us, people saying unpleasant things about us. We never really think about this as a great blessing from the Buddhas to show us the path, to show us the positive path. We don't take it as a way of helping us to engage in Dharma practice. So we need to continually check our mind and to see why our mind, even in each circumstance, is whether we're working, whether we're on vacation, whatever we're doing, why can't we carry the Dharma practice over into all of these activities? And I think it's because we're under the sway of the three poisons, and these three poisons are always, of course, they come from the self-grasping and the ego, but they're also supporting and helping the ego to remain strong. So this is the way I think that you can see how it's difficult to practice the Dharma like this.
Yeah, the second line there it says Karsati, the statute, undermine delusion,
disillusion, disillusion,
delusion, 98. Dissolutions, having this kind of distraction, what kind of distraction might give us, encourage us to do is that
Oh yeah. Yeah, so it what it stops us doing is, for instance, it stops us from having this delusion or sort of sense of remorse or regret or distaste for samsara, for the cyclic existence. Or also, if it's somebody who has sort of, it stops us from developing that, but it also, for those who have developed it, this distraction sort of encourages them to forget about forget their distaste for samsara.
Now this should be our daily homework when we talk about it is really important in order to know that all the suffering and the cause of the suffering is the ignorance mind. And then we say we don't need to look very far away. Just think about this life and think all this suffering, some of the sufferings that we have here in our life, that is 100% coming from our ignorance mind of this life. So if we can connect these two, and now way of disconnecting, we have to connect with this verse too, saying how this praising or karsa, all these four karsa,
for worldly
concerns, how these the four main worldly concerns really brings a destruction in our life, and then how that we being so distracted towards samsara, that ultimately we have to remember this kind of distraction is going to give a contribution towards self-grasping, and especially person who is really trying to generate renunciation. Person who is really trying to generate renunciation, that person has to have a time to time have a dissolution, right?
Dissolution with cyclic existence.
Dissolution of cycle with the cyclic existence. That now automatically we become so aware, right? How it's really harming. It's not just a distraction, as it brings such a strong contribution towards a distraction, towards 8 worldly concerns, and then how this becomes, how it really sees our or brings damage towards our practice of renunciation. That we have to think. And then ultimately there's a jealousy, because if you feel I'm the number one, that's why His Holiness always gives a teaching that he's saying in his dream, he never thinks I am the Dalai Lama. He thinks I am the one of you. Right? One of you,
One of the 7 billion. One of you.
One of the 7 billion of the human being in this planet. So that ultimately, this His Holiness simple word covers Shantideva's most of the 6 chapters verses. And then so if you cannot practice like that, then automatically what will happen with this kind of popped up feeling that you have, like I popped up
puffed up, or full of oneself. You can say full of oneself. I'm full of oneself.
Full of oneself.
Yeah.
This automatically gives like I'm the number one. Then it's more like you are studying in the class and then you are always taking number one and somebody comes up and beats you, then automatically even you are number two. That's great thing you have done, but you will never appreciate your efforts. You are always focusing that how dare that he can take my place or she can take my place. So much kind of grasping is there. Jealousy. Once there's a jealousy, then the worst number, the fourth one.
The fourth line.
And all the very and all the very best is destroyed. This is in English. It is very simple, but here saying 푸숨 처방 지버체. 제장가 푸숨 처방 지버체 say 되게 굳이 믹스에 가르도 슬라비나. 아주 레단 준제기 삼노당데 지라. 근데 미치려야 지기다 튕긴 푸숨 처고지 루비 뭐 통원데. 야바도 디 아주 푸숨 처고 다가라라 삼노당데요. 마도 지기 주 푸숨 처고라 지구 푸숨 처고 깨버려서 삼노당기요 말. 아주 지구 푸숨 처고 통제 딜 미수별로 끼고요. 뒤에 세미나로라 지구 푸숨 처고 된지지 안 되고 이도 좀 디다 튕비기 주 푸숨 처고 된 아양 루버 치기 슬라운데 좀. 그 뒤들 기와 제수이랑 유예버 봐. 세상과 연된된로 차도당 아니 푸숨 처고 찍을지 딱 봐도 세상 and all the very best is destroyed lana and shira rang kotumudwa.
So you have to be this kind of simple phrase in English kind of hides some much deeper meaning in the Tibetan word, the punsun sopo, sort of all the kind of wondrous things or something like that. And what it there's a very special meaning to this, and this is related to cause and effect. What we do is we see someone with all the wonderful, the very best of things, the wonderful things, and we just focus on that, which is actually the result, but we never make the connection that the result of many wondrous things came from a complete and it comes in accord with a complete collection of causes which produced it. So we always just focus on that result which the person has received, and we sort of get jealous about it, as it says in the lines where it says and we start to envy them, those who have these qualities, so also the qualities as well, and these all the best of all wondrous things. and we just focus on that, and we find it kind of, we can't have any form, we can't get jealous, we can't have patience with it, we find it unbearable. But we never think, oh, the reason that's the result, and where that result came from was the complete collection of causes, and therefore actually think how amazing the virtue they've created, how wonderful that they created that virtue, or think I should create that virtue in order to get the result. We never think like this. We only look at the result and find it unbearable to deal with.
사면 권용요나 아부호세의 권용에 즉 요르다 건조 들이지바 노멘트 소럽 지바 노멘트 지라고 요리스 건조 미든제게 아니 아부호도 바 시부사와 통그레스 바 요르바 바 시부사와 통그레스 네 아부호게 라자와 통요 말이스 라자바 디 지간에도 자네 바 those college abati thongyo maris abuhoge classabade thongbiyoris udilabyo.
I see. Yeah, so there's a proverb where a Tibetan proverb which talks about how people look at the a sort of a very, very rich or very, very sort of powerful and rich sampa that the nomads eat, but nobody ever looks at the nobody notices the effort of going up into the mountains and all the work that's involved in achieving that. So in the same way, you can relate this to example where they see the wondrous things, but they don't think about how it is created. So it's called kase apaho. Apaho kasana it's a kind of nomad, but they so you can see the analogy there for not looking at the difficulty that took to create it.
Yeah. What did it? So in order to understand all this, you have to calm a little down. You have to, in order to see the quality of the great beings, you need to lower yourself a bit, right? Because we are like, if we are going to get something from one, then you have like a water. You have to hold your both hands that the water stays in your hand. We should be very careful, like have to do like this. You cannot do like this. So all the waters will go out. So to hold it with you very careful, so you need to, in order to bring knowledge of others, seeing the kindness of others, and seeing the opportunity that whether the enemy has a motivation to help us or not, but it is not a practitioner is not looking for a motivation for others that they will help me. No, practitioner always is seeing the golden opportunity from the Buddhas and the sentient beings. So once you see that, you will appreciate that somehow you got it from that person. So in order to do that, you need to lower yourself. So Tibetans have a culture saying, no, I don't know. Even they know much, but they will say, I don't know nothing. So how does that come is from this way of thinking, actually. But sometimes Tibetans go like too much down. Then some Westerners think they don't know anything. So you should know why they're saying. But some maybe they don't know why they're saying, but really why this tradition or this way of thinking the Tibetans have, saying even they know it, they say I don't know. So they're lowering their self, so to communicate better with others. So some Tibetans go with the Westerners, and they think they're knowing so much. They are so full of ego.
Full of themselves,
full of themselves. So the miscommunication is there always. Okay. Teacher. Now verse number 99. Teacher Dagger so and she conda near never, Teda and Yason Donsung Chir Shumin Nam 99. Please.
Therefore, are not those who are closely involved in destroying my praise and the like also involved in protecting me from falling into the unfortunate realms?
This is one kind of a reminder for practitioners. When somebody is really harming your reputation and also causing problems, then automatically this has to ring, like it has to remind you this verse saying, now person who I am always trying to not to go to the hell, I was always thinking I'm going to end the suffering. That person, I cannot bear this kind of a situation, then who am I? Am I not the person who wants to seize and close the door of the lower realms forever? And why now this situation comes and I give away the key of the patient's door of the patients and then bring the angry in and inviting the hell towards myself. So 동원 송질 들어와 understood
from falling, protecting me from falling.
From falling into the unfortunate realms. Okay. Now then, was number 100. And then, Jowa Tunyela, Niedan Kudi Chingmu, Kanda, Dajin Trecheva, Tela Dan Jitterto. So now here, up there, it's more about Shantideva is talking about how this kind of distraction leads to the self-grasping. Now this one is more connecting with the self-cherishing. Now saying that it's not because all this problem going to the hell or something is the biggest problem. The biggest problem is I, the one who is trying to bring all the sentient being as a guest of honor, to that I have such a wonderful things to offer to the sentient beings. So now this opportunity, I'm never I'm never going to let that go. So so now even somebody praises, somebody gives me a gift, but any kind of things they will try to give me make me happy, and so that kind of happiness before turning into the self-grasping and self-cherishing, and I will never let this happen. And person who I'm always going to cherish others, I don't need myself this kind of praises and so on. 언제래도 얘는 꾸디 칭미고 강다 다징 죄제바 텔라 다징 세드웨 강다 다징 강다 다징 징 절체바스 다징 징단들니 와 당보디 징단 찍대 당보抓차소아 셴바들도와 니위 징와디 가는 셴바 당보디 셴바치 셴바디게 퀄리티 없지 다 단다 징버 징세기 징딕 단다 징세디 디레도가 가서래 랑징징디 과전에서는 특지 코로나로 가르친 것도서나 draw to Nela, Sikwa. And draw to Nis. Not around Tarba to Nis, Kitchim, and draw to Nis. Siduzembe, Ada Shenig and Shenjabers in meetings. Siduzembe, teaching Dandy, around some of those Pandrovina, Shenje Jabberzinia the Ladua. Chezanga did Jimbati Rang, Sidu teaching said, Tileba Trovachapa. Tell Dani, Jither Trosuta, Simgenlia, Niegi, Tamda, Nienrad, and the Zulia never Gionsona, not Condosa with Jims.
So, and so in this verse, Shambadigi, Sosagi, Niebatan, Koti, the top of the Sosagi Shambadi, Tambodi, yeah. So the first, there are two, there's an interesting, there's an important way to explain. So it says, I am striving for freedom, do not need to be bound by material gain and honor. So in some sense, and then it says, so why should I be angry with those who free me from this bondage, or this, being this bondage? And there are two ways in which we are bound. So the first one is sort of more connected with the first lines of the verse to do with the the material gain, honor, fame, esteem, the worldly concerns, and our attachment and clinging attachment to those worldly concerns. So that's the and how the under the sway of that attachment to those, that attachment, it brings us again and again rebirth in cyclic existence. But it's at the top, in the first line where it says, I am striving for freedom. We have to take this in the context not of mere liberation for oneself, but in the sense of wishing to be liberated in order to work for in order to help and provide welfare for all the sentient beings. So in that context, what binds us is actually so because we're not working just for personal liberation, but for the welfare of all, then what binds us is self-cherishing. And cherishing the self and not cherishing others, and so this is what we have to look inside of ourselves and to see how the self, how the self-cherishing also binds us. It is also a form of bondage for those who wish to work for the welfare of others. And then at the end, in the last verse, last part of the verse, it says, so why should I be angry? Why should I get angry with those those who are kind of helping me? I should never get angry with those who are helping me to free me from these two forms of bondage.
That in the 101. Dane dungi jungde la sanje jine chinlap chin midong gofar ni juba tela dane jitter to 101.
Those who wish to cause me suffering are like Buddhas bestowing waves of blessing. And as they open the door for my not going to an unfortunate realm, why should I be angry with them?
That this is the one what I said earlier. So it talks more about, now let's discuss about that a little bit. Will you not say that when we talk about two types of bodhicitta, ultimate bodhicitta and conventional bodhicitta? So ultimate bodhicitta, if we take an example from the merit field of Buddhists, how they have recognized sentient beings
most sentient beings, they are not kind of qualified to see this reality. So ones who has seen this reality is the Buddhas and Aryas. So that we say we take refuge in there. So second one, on a conventional level or conventional bodhicitta, there it is more about when we talk about the we won't say like a merit field, but it's almost kind of like merit field is the sentient being itself. So there, if you Buddha has what do we say? In many texts in the sutra, we can say, don't harm this and that sentient being. If you harm them, it's harming me too. That's what Buddha said. And it is for us, there is not much kind of a connection. But Buddha clearly said that many times, but we cannot make the connection. So saying, if I harm somebody, and you won't accept it, I'm harming Buddha at the same time, because Buddha cannot be harmed. But the most important thing that we are missing here is what makes Buddha most important is that sentient being. That one particular sentient being is very important. That Buddha, he is the one of the cause that become, because Buddha is fully enlightened at the moment. Buddha Shakyamuni become Buddha. Then our way of looking at that being changes. So here it's saying Chinlab Shin. It's more like Buddha has bestowed the waves of blessing. Not like. Let's take out this like. This is for us to understand more smoothly. But let's take out the like from there and say Buddha has blessed. How, if you think Buddha, who made Buddha most important is the sentient beings. So then ultimately, then reason is, how can we dare angry towards our enemy? Because I have taken a refuge towards Buddha. How can I harm Tibetans? Because I take refuge in His Holiness Dalai Lama. Similarly, they do. So, so sometimes we have to say, like the Buddha has blessed. But sometimes we definitely have to think, yes, Buddha has to, we cannot say Buddha is blessed by sentient being. That will be very funny. But who makes Buddha important is the sentient being. But here, it's more about taking advantage of the lojong. It's more about lojong here. Seeing this way, it's more like the inspiration there waiting for you. So why you are closing this door? Sentient beings are trying to close the door of all these negativities for you by performing so many 카시 쇠복검사 카시 진보당사 또 시제 가지고 남바된 용샤주디 아주 디 고급대 아니
And so through this sort of flux of kind of karmic appearance of the different karmic appearances of the sentient beings, then they provide us with the great opportunities for the practice of patience, the practices such as the practice of patience, the practice of generosity, practice of compassion. And so we have to be really careful that we don't let these tremendous opportunities go by us without taking those opportunities.
Okay, now we stop here today, and then we have one question left from our
previous
class. So the question is more about what is the object of the compassion, something like that.
Yeah. Suzuki ninjige Suzuki mikbadegi mikyu roshitu mikbadegi ninji gombe mikbadegi and semjen rebe Suzuki Jimson because Jimson deni gom Jimson deni gom ne Suzuki ninji sowachi gerbe mikbakarede sowa ninji sowa rebe semjen rebe nika rebe kayimba didoshi ani nika yina ani nanzu shebachi mixigi yu didoshi chadu dos atawa tangere
maranju 저기 남자 군도 닝지기 tingi 간다 야 미보 semjen 탐젤 민스 미보 semjen 민스라 부여 말이야 탐젤 민스야 돼 닝지 첨불 나 닝지 세야 될다 semjen 초르벌 여 초르와 다다나 아주 닝지 첨부기 시고 닝지 공고에 개야만 아주 닝지 여여 그래 나 아주 내버디 가르치는 닝지 첨부기 그러와 닝지 공고도 초르벌 여러 디도 잠비 거기 닝지 친구 친이 나로라 미고 심전 탐절을 미 도와주고 그랬어. 네 미고 심전 탐절을 미고 그랬어. 도 잠비 단다 디나로 사상하고 월스티 같으로 내가 친구 치셔지를 샤세야 돼. 구주구주라. 그랑에 디 단다 벌써 걸리디 실리지즘 좀 아주 세제.
어때
어데 나디 60딜 somos también lenta grande. 그래서는 미국 초르버지 개용치 안 디스 대화된 데나서 기재도 말해 동네에 치는 기재 말해서 람상고는 되념도 아니 되념도 순간 개용치 다 다니엘 파마소 아니 당고스 수수기 차바제서기 년도 좋게요 니버디 딘디기 얘기 아니 닝지디 심전 탐제의 인세기 아니 동네에 치는 지마롱 냠베 로데 와 인지 삼로티 아니 디간을 깨도 수수 차바제서기 년도 저를 깨도 아테네스 야 키원지 안 발말 가르친 깨도 데디리 다 발말라 예와토에 삼로리지 다테네 다디 키원지는 다 딜라 아주 독쇼 가르쳐는 달라 동네 중원도 수수로 가와게 해줘 디 가와디 가르치는 기기요 디 마제요 제제 디 당동의 동네에 태어나서 이거 삼로도 가르친 디요 말해서 어디 차년버지 레트벌라 좋다 재미시 고면도 디 탐람대로 봐 다디 지시슈디 단다 아자 단다 그게 저당시도 랜드 잡이나 미버디 심전디 샤 심제 탐제 샤스도 좀 심제 봐 뭔가 삼로 땅고에 자원이네요 말해 가전스나 동에 디당 디더지 빼는 거나야 손럽지나 단에 손딩에 고나니 미디다 디체바지 체도 아니에게 디 동에다 체치도 니에게 가리는 시기 세 삼라운드 선배 님 고나니에 디나로라 수수 삼로 탐제 체반나신 탐자 코미트먼트 체반나신 지기 디나로라 니 바로 순간에 날래서나 디셈바디 딱바 되기도 되는 애들이다
그래서
제장가 미버 심제 탐절미니 넘버 동에데 텐데 시도와 넘버 동에데 넘버 지어봐 되기 넘버 디 미국 간대지간에 있는 캡톤이 구세고였다.
Yeah.
어디를 뒤인도 잠베다 디 뭐랑기 단다 아주 포커스틱 와르도스네 심진 탐지 내가 가르치면서는 동의대 대기하게 상부디 어디를 시 저장 미부지 가서 그래 셰바치기 난 셰바치기 미부니 키워입니다.
Yeah. And so in talking about the kind of focal or referential object of compassion, then usually we refer to this the focal object as being all sentient beings. So we have to be a little bit careful here, because we know, but here we're talking about great compassion, right? We're not talking about compassion. There's no need for us to. We all have compassion, because compassion would just be focusing. We are sort of biased or kind of very incomplete form of compassion, where we wish a certain number, a certain particular person to be free of suffering, or a certain number of people to be suffering. So we all have that. We don't need to meditate on that. We've got that already. But here what we're talking about is, of course, great compassion. And this connects back to verse number 96, where we talked about the syllogism of sort of this kind of biasness that we have. And so, in that particular case, we were talking about, the biasness in relation to people getting happy. We would become happy that people got happy from the situation around giving praise, but not all of them. So we have this choriwa, this we're biased in terms of it, and so so we have to talk about the referential or the focal or the main meditational focus of compassion as being all sentient beings. And this also connects to the meditation where we take a close one, a friend or a close one, a loved one, someone close to us, and then someone who is a sort of stranger to us, and then someone who is our enemy. And so at the moment we can with those who are close to us, our friends, family, or those loved ones who are close to us, we have no problem wishing them to be free from suffering. But then what we have to do, and you can first start there with a close friend or someone we feel very close to, and wish them to be free from suffering. So the aspect, so the focal object is that all sentient beings. The aspect of the mind is that we wishing, really, wouldn't it be so wonderful if they would be free of all this suffering, that wish for them to be free of all their suffering. And then you can sort of work through those that we've kind of sort of don't pay any attention to. We're just kind of sort of not ignored, but we're those that we're unaware of, the kind of people in the middle category. And then, of course, the hardest of all, the enemy. And the enemy, of course, is the most difficult. So we have to focus on all of these, eventually, on all of these sentient beings, and wishing for them to be free of all sufferings. Now, the enemy, of course, is the hardest of all, because not only do we not have the wish for them to be free of suffering, we're happy when they when they're suffering. So this is so we need to look at that. That really how the distinct counteraction between how there's, particularly in relation to the enemy, how we were, the mind of compassion, which is wishing for certain sentient beings to be free of suffering, and the mind which actually is happy and wishes others to have suffering, and look at that inside of ourselves. And this, of course, is very much related to meditation on the four immeasurables. And so the main focal point is the all sentient beings. And the aspect is the wish for them to be free of all suffering. And we're talking about great compassion here. And so, if we just took a situation of someone having a headache, and we sort of made the commitment that whatever we would do whatever we could in order to help alleviate that headache. And then if you were sort of able to really expand the focus, so that would be the commitment, the kind of aspect, the commitment to relieve them as much as we could of the headache. And then if you were able to relate that to the focal object of the three categories, then this is how you develop that kind of greater sense. And so with the aspect of and then of course wishing them to be free of all suffering. So the sentient beings are the focal, all sentient beings are the focal object, but the work or the kind of activity or the function of compassion is that wishing them to be free of all forms of suffering.
the verse 96 the
Yeah, like
okay. Yeah.
Rinpoche is just reminding me, just to make sure. You remember when we talked about verse 96 and we talked about how we had this kind of biased way of enjoying other people having happiness, and Rinpoche gave a syllogism about how we found that so how in the syllogism the sign, what we call the sign, was not established in the syllogism because we weren't applying it evenly to all beings. So Rinpoche reminds us to look back at that in relation to this.
The question didn't Jebitone Tanda Aja Moran Chibadway.
B, maybe B, she might have had a follow-up. B, did you have a follow-up to that?
So the meditation on compassion, as the way Rinpoche is described, is always analytical meditation. So do we follow up with some kind of like after we have done that, do we then rest our mind on something for a little while? Or is that the end of the meditation?
Mini Ninji Mipa Sevuchaya. Number near to Yachi. Dear word loyal shoot with Chungsona.
Yeah.
And around the Vita, Chaga Ninji Dubiak Shadow, and Ninji Koranaya, and Samatang to Checheta, Lo Comditiati. Catch him. Yanga Shini Dumni Jigi, Casanyaman and Samming of the Gage one, and Shini Dumni Jigi, Semne Gudu, your Semne Gudi and Delaya, a Semne Gugi Yabujoyala, any Iji down top to the Zonalone, Tambodinano top de la Tube top said, Tambu Rubu. Oh, Tandang under the shed Tube top down, Sambe top to Yorta. Zoya watch on Savishula information chasm, you did Gablata, Shine, Tanga, Swagigdu, Ninji Chimbusidu, Swagigdu, Semjan Dunga, the Tenet Timon Sambudu, in a simple Timbumindus. Well, Dumzen Samashiadu, Ribo Dumzen, in a sem delta, and Jibber Chetumindu, that the correction, and Shineta, Shine Komiagi, Miguel Ratar. Shine Druig, the Migden de Ninji Kiona degree, and around the Hadan Lamin enjoyed in the Don, the Minajeres com Damagina, Shine did dig in Ninji Tachimbuti, and Ninji Tapet, Mazumasone, never yons cho Jig the Dubigita, Hadi Surishalana, and Jeres. Mahomba and Ninji Shimbuya, which gave to Nasudo children, Jeres on the child. Shera Yabos on Roach Kadecha, Jambian Chavos. Jambians to do share with Danijin, some down with Mato, Jambians to do Nijimiji Lavola dedicated in some down with the Nujambeta, Ketchishu, the would dig some down there, me but the generous charge. When the generous me with Harangi, Ninjil me with Roto Chagulta. Chang around the generous Mina. Ninjil me will Ruguyan and Daguri, Ning Jeresi comes to the Zambe, and at Chalaya, and Chaton Chandon Roger, Chaman go to the Comchin, do dead in digging Ninji Agir Ruguyame Tezumre.
And this is a very good question that B has asked, and in terms of so the first sort of job is really to get a very clear understanding of these sort of components of the compassion, in terms of getting very clear about what the focal object is and how to be able to sort of meditate on that, and also getting very clear about the aspect, you know, in terms of that may all sentient beings be free of all forms of suffering, but getting very clear about these things. And so then once you've sort of got clear, once you have to get clear about it at the beginning, and then you begin to really cultivate you start to cultivate it and to develop it and to cultivate that and to kind of enhance it, the power of it. For instance, in when we're developing shamatha, there are the 9 stages of 9 sort of stages of development of shamatha. But at the beginning, we have to know about sort of the 4 mental applications and the 6 powers, various supportive practices and understandings which help us to proceed through the 9 stages of shamatha. And the first power is the power of hearing. So that's where we're sort of kind of at right now, is you're kind of listening to gaining the information, if you like, something like that. And then from there you get the correct information, and then once all the information is gathered together, then you really start to contemplate and to contemplate and then at some point you'll get that real sense of the feeling arising, the feeling of great compassion arising, but still there's a sense in which it isn't immediately stable, and so and also, you know, so so we can when we think of and also, so a way to sort of enhance that and to cultivate it is when we think about compassion, then the kind of deity who is the very embodiment of compassion is Avalokiteshvara, Chenrezig, and you know they are the deity primarily associated with compassion. And so we have to have that sense, you know, you kind of and of course, if it's for development of wisdom, then Manjushri is the very embodiment of wisdom. So if for instance, if we were trying to develop wisdom, then you don't have to you can imagine yourself either to meditate on Manjushri or Avalokiteshvara, or to become them. But it doesn't mean you have to wander around with a sword, or in terms of Avalokiteshvara, you can sit there kind of very really having to go meditate on Avalokiteshvara with the arms, with the different objects held in each arm, and the posture, etc. But I think Avalokiteshvara is the very embodiment of compassion, and so it's not just about this kind of that sense of how we might be able to sort of able to meditate on the form of the deity, but really to think like, since they are the very embodiment of the complete great compassion, I want to become like them. So that also is a way to sort of the Demboche tabreo Demboche
Demboche
Suzuki Hakone Demboche. Kailan Nomadigi, Nansu Ninji Great Compassion Approach is Gesares, Yeni Ko Dembo Mindus. That Dembo Zoela Dirve.
Great compassion ke amare ne compassion, great compassion ko la ya ta knowledge yor.
Yeah.
The knowledge yor di tembu digo amare.
Yeah.
Do you know anzu ningji ki simbe to ne le che to yo amare.
Yeah.
Ningji di chore ba cha de yor ba. Tamjeli ke to yo amare.
Yeah.
And verse number 96 sungman shin. Tamjeli ke de ka du chegre es jambe. 아니 되네 로디 땡부대에 탁시텔라던 신에다 신의 루베디 레용도와
Shine aleo. Yeah, and so in terms of, so that's we can actually we get the feeling that compassion is arising, yes, or even great compassion arising, but it's still biased, it's still incomplete, as we've mentioned in verse 96. So the things that we do, the activities and practices that we do are not sustained by great compassion because we haven't actually properly given rise to it. We've got the information, we've got the knowledge, and but that's not become stabilized. And so practices such as shamatha help us in stabilizing these other forms of practice, such as wisdom or compassion. Chat nan chik tu rimse chang tu tu na di lobsang tenye ki chat nan tu chik shura
chat na le
chat nan ro zoom di
lobsang tu be Simon, can you ask about how to give more detailed explanation of difference between the karadi? Mikpa
number and zintangi in general and great compassion at Dovachine. Mikpa number zintangi
다 미버 세야디 말한주 수치도 임바슬람나 레가티 수치도 지구요슬람나 미버 찬로 봐 콘줄라 가르치야 임바스 가르치야 임바스도 네 동에 잡을 쳐야 임스 디치도 나바타 쳐도와
Yeah. Yeah. So in terms of compassion, then if we break this down in terms of compassion, so the question is asking, so somebody said the connection went bad. So
just the very last part of what you were saying
previously.
Yeah, previously.
The very last part was that we have all the information. We may have gained all the information and knowledge, and we've sort of, and this is what we call, power of hearing, but we haven't. And so we've got that, and we start our contemplation, and we may get the feeling that sort of compassion is arising us, but it's not real. Certainly not real great compassion. It's biased. It doesn't apply to all. It's incomplete, as we mentioned in verse 96 in the syllogism that Rinpoche gave us from verse 96. So, in order to get great compassion to stabilize, we would use use practices such as the concentrations and shamatha in order to stabilize practices such as wisdom and compassion. So Rinpoche says the focal or referential or focal object is kind of like, if you ask yourself, who's it for in this sense, because we're talking about compassion or great compassion, who's it for? And the aspect is like, what's the function, or what's the kind of activity in relation to who is it for? So who is it for would be all sentient beings. What does it do? What's the function? And then that would be to have all sentient beings to be free from all forms of suffering. So if you think of the referential object like that, and then the aspect like that.
Simon has frozen. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, B.
Okay, I'm sorry. So on the analytical part, I understand about the object and then the function. But when we want to stabilize it and we get to the shamatha stage, then does our mind just rest on the sentient being or the feeling that we have generated?
미버 셈젠세요 말이 닝지 개침으로 샤세 들어봐 셈젠 개침으로 샤 동연 제야의 개침으로 주면 비체 동연 제야의 탑의 닝지 맨날 딱 뺏사샤 다 닝지도 보도 쓰고 Then you the time Ningji di Lord Jibber Chi in Sidu Zembe, and it lamsan Ningji Koran King.
Kagi,
Ningji Koran.
Oh,
Chanju Sem Mena Tasson Sidu and Chanju Sem Gomdi Warba.
yeah.
That Chanju Sem Magungala, Machanju Sem Gombi is Dusana come to a Kayomare. General Chanju Sem with Sini to Sambatan Jenny, Chanju Sem Gan Chao. Then I hear Ningji with Sini the Sambatan and Ningji Gan, a same job over.
Oh,
Sini Sambatan Nielish.
Yeah.
Niela ya Pumba Chesho Labina, Gaja Shavina, Pumba Chesho Slavina, Pumba Hamogoni Mitelea, secret. Pumba Sina, and it thought their Shavshu church of attention, New Yendela Pumba Sigur Dassit. Tene Medelea, Shine called Lord Jew under them, Dipumbare, Citizen Ben, Pumba, Citizen Lord Disatwa. Then I shall undo Ningji, Citizen Countries and Ningji Chambo, Citizen, sometimes Dungan and Chimaron, Citizen Bet, Dunge the Karel Kogu, sometimes Tamjes Karel some Dangu, and it didn't send the same never chain than one the Yiji Leche, and Shine Ningji said the devil, Chibara.
And so the way to sort of it's sort of like the way to sort of engage with this is sort of like it's not in just the sentient beings alone is not useful to us, because what's the need for compassion? So they want it's not just about sentient beings, it's about the fact that you want them to be free from all forms of suffering. So therefore you think like there's no other way for me to help in that form of welfare for sentient beings apart from compassion. Compassion is the only thing that's going to help me in terms of the awakening mind, the wish for complete enlightenment. And then we think in that we feel that we have, the first step comes that we feel that we have to have it. So what do we want? We want to help sentient beings the most. So what do? We need to get enlightenment, and therefore we need bodhicitta in order to achieve that enlightenment. So the best way, right at the beginning, the best way for us to think about whether it's bodhicitta or it's great compassion is to think about the definition, the precise definitions of these qualities, and then really make sure that we understand each of the parts of the definition. So if somebody if you shout to someone, bring me a pot, or bring me a pot, but the person has never encountered a pot and doesn't know what a pot is, they'll just say I don't, what do you mean? But if the person has become familiar with something that's bulbous and able to hold water, the definition of that's not quite the definition of the pot, but if they're aware of once you explain to them the definition of the pot, and they go, then they say, oh, okay, yeah, I understand what you mean, now I can bring you a pot, otherwise it can't function. So, and then once they've become familiar in that very simple example with what it means to be a pot, and then you ask to bring me a pot, then they'll be able to do that. And in the same way, whether it's compassion or great compassion or bodhicitta, we have to, become, let's say, in terms of great compassion, become familiar with what is the definition of great compassion and each of the aspects of great compassion. So, what do we mean by all sentient beings in that sense? What does it mean when we use the word free from suffering? What are we talking about when we're talking about suffering? And how would the kind of power or the potential of the great compassion help in order to fulfill all of that? So it's important, and this is what goes first before we do anything else. This is the most important thing to remember at the beginning, is to be aware of these definitions and all the details of each part of that.
Okay. Ata digi tanda samini charan diporu de la ya 디 디시 균투는 야고요래. 신남 곰이야당 퇴남 곰세 지니바.
Oh, Shenam Dunam Gom.
퇴남
Dunam, yeah.
퇴남 빼나
Yeah.
폼바로지 곰 슬랍나.
Yeah.
퇴rol로 차는 곰이야마 또 딜리야 초와지는 곰이야케 요 말에.
Ah,
닌지 곰스도 잠베 고 퇴남다 신남 니가 곰이야요. 여장가 신남 맞지 고는 니 퇴남도 끼고 요 퇴남도 끼체비 주고라 아니 신이 딘디 시아바디 고 시아바라 닌지스도 시아바라 초와라
yeah. Yeah.
초와디 끼고 초와디 가수 숙치에 끼서는 닌지 때문에 보고요.
Yeah.
리 저랑기 신남 퇴남 걸 대시견 쇼아 아니 나 단다 미팅지를 두고도 주주든 벌이야. angede sha ange ngwa molum du 중하라 쇼울치기 이 저란조 니디 귤차바다 톨링도 제차바다니 디나셔나. Okay, so I take a leave now, so I have to be in a meeting, so please you guys continue and you guys debate all night all day. Lobson is there. He debates very nicely. Okay, that's all. Okay, so please do the dedication. After this, I will do separately. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so the last part of that was Rinpoche was just saying that there are two methods of meditation. I'm trying to think. One is the meditation where you just meditate on the it's like an objective meditation, and the other one is more like subjective meditation. So with meditation with an objective aspect and meditation with a subjective aspect. So that, for instance, if you're just meditating on a pot, the pot is just a kind of external thing which you just cultivate sort of concentration or something on the basis of. But things like compassion, which are sort of mental qualities, it means that the mind actually becomes the kind of entity of the aspect. It becomes the mental aspect because it's a kind of mental event and becomes the mental aspect. And then as that sort of feeling of compassion, great compassion of wishing that all sentient beings be free from all forms of suffering, then is the strength of that mental aspect, because it's a mind, right? That mental aspect is cultivated, developed, and enhanced further and further, and so your compassion becomes stronger. This is not possible with just sort of kind of the form of an objective aspect meditation, where you're just taking a kind of object and whether you analyze or whether you just focus on it. So there's one where it becomes the very entity of the mind, it becomes the very entity in the mind, and the other one it doesn't. So that's what Rinpoche mentioned at the end and asked you to think about that.
So basically, that means there isn't a shamatha phase of meditation on compassion. So we, at least where I'm at, I think what I mainly need to do is the analytical part.
Yeah,
seems.
for us, I'm sure. Can't say for sure for anybody, but yeah, definitely. Yeah, the analytical. Yeah, I mean, at some point, you do have, minds which are sustained by, compassion. Whether you develop shamatha based on compassion itself, I'm not sure about that. But yeah, we're at the analytical phase. So Rinpoche is saying that the most important thing is that we have to get exactly clear what it means, like really clear. That's our information, that's our data, or something like our information. And then from that, then we start to develop it, but that's the key right there. And we're analyzing, like you say, it's analytical meditation. Yeah, it's not.
Okay, thank you, Simon.
It's a good question, because that is a very good question, because what you mean is can you take compassion itself as the focal object of shamatha? That's what you mean, right?
Well, actually,
Or can great compassion become the very entity of shamatha, something like that?
I asked that question because somehow I erroneously thought that that's what we were supposed to do. But now with Rinpoche's answers, he seems to clarify that that's not that. Yeah.
I think, yeah, for all, and also his holiness as well. I think that's why he says study, is because
Okay. All right.
for us, I mean, at some point, that understanding, maybe that clarity may be so clear that maybe there's a real movement away from analytical meditation into sort of placement or stabilizing meditation. But for us, for most of us, it's going to be the continual need to be very clear about, you know, and meditating on those things. We can meditate is more. Don't be afraid of analytical meditation.
Sorry, can you repeat that, Simon? You were just
Jump it.
breaking a bit there.
Oh, I mean, I don't like to contribute too much like this, but yeah, just that for us at our level of development, probably that, you know, it's analytical, which is sort of defining what does it mean to be, you know, for instance, what does it mean to be free of all suffering? So then we have to go into the topic of you know, the pervasive condition, suffering. What does that mean? And how does, you know, and there's a lot of details involved in that, because as Rinpoche says, we have compassion. There's no problem. We've got totally biased, non-extensive biased compassion. No problem. We're doing it all the time. You know, when there's a cat outside and it's hurt its leg, it's there. But you know, what does, you know, we haven't got we've got to make sure that we understand all the criteria of things like great compassion. So that's very analytical. What does it mean to you know, pervasive condition suffering? What is that about? And really go into it. I mean, that's in other situations that I've been in with Rinpoche, that's what he's trying to say to us, is really look into this. It's important to be very clear, not to have some kind of woolly, sort of very unprecise idea of it, but to look into it. And that's analytical, nearly mostly. Sorry, I don't want to go on because I don't feel very comfortable.
Should we do the
But
dedication?
yeah, dedication.
Having thoroughly investigated in accord with all that I've heard day and night through the four reasonings, mind born of reflection on these topics of contemplation, may this discernment sever all doubts. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good, all powerful Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. In all my lives, never separated from perfect gurus, may I enjoy the magnificent Dharma. By completing the qualities of the grounds and paths, may I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara. I fully dedicate all these virtues to be able to train just like the hero Manjushri who knows reality, and just like Samantabhadra as well. I fully dedicate all my roots of virtue with the dedication praised as the best by all the gone beyond victorious ones of the three times in order to have good conduct. With my heart going out with great compassion in whatever direction the most precious teachings of Noya spread, or one spread of decline, may I reveal this treasure of happiness and aid.
Thank you.
Thank you all.